It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life. From the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators. The famous and not so famous. The controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here is Douglas Coleman.
Howdy, howdy, ho, hey, ha. Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. It's me, Douglas Coleman. Thank you for joining us. Nice to have you with us. Jennifer McGill is with us today. Jennifer is a singer-songwriter, originally from Texas. I think she lives in Nashville now, but not quite sure on that one. She's got a new album out called Unbreakable, which premiered on Fox News along with the video. The video is on YouTube. Check it out, called Unbreakable. We've got a couple of tracks from the album to play, as well as a full show interview. Jennifer's story is a very interesting one. She was a former cast member on the Mickey Mouse Club show from 1989 to 1994, and she worked alongside some notable people, namely Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, Ryan Gosling, and many others. She will tell us all about her experience working at the Mickey Mouse Club. After the show wrapped, she went to college and pursued a career in singing, and now she is a successful singer-songwriter. Just one quick note, if you like what we do here at the Douglas Coleman Show and you'd like to see us get to a 2-show-per-week format, we need your help to do it. Please check out our patreon.com page, where you can help us out for as little as $1 a month. If you'd like to pay more than that, we're offering advertising. There are different payment levels. Please check us out, patreon.com/Douglas Coleman Show. We will be right back with Jennifer McGill.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of the Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Acclaimed author of Garden, Jane Yates brings you the first book in a new trilogy, Octopus Pirate, a story of a foundling who has unusual talents, such as the ability to communicate with octopuses. As a baby, he was washed up on an island off the Scottish mainland. An eccentric former nun who lives alone with cats brings him up. He joins a circus and narrowly escapes plots against him, flees to Cornwall, builds a replica pirate ship that's also an airship to travel back in time to fight real pirates. Get your copy today from Amazon, only 99 cents.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps from the UK, record producer, engineer. You might have heard of me. I've worked with artists from Elton John to Led Zeppelin to Bad Company, Twisted Sister, Robbie Williams, Oasis, many great bands and artists in the past and the present and hopefully in the future. But you can work with me as well. You know, all you got to do is get in touch with me on eppsmusicproductions.com. That's EPPSproductionsmusic.com. And I can help you with your productions and with your recordings. A lot of people do home recordings now, which you can only take so far. Maybe they need a bit of professional help. So get in touch with me and we can sort it out. And thanks for Douglas Coleman for giving me this spot. Thanks a lot. Cheers, bye.
go listen, download, and subscribe to The Douglas Coleman Show. It's available at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. Also on iTunes, Spreaker, and YouTube. The Douglas Coleman Show is an internationally syndicated talk and music show that features fascinating and sometimes famous guests from all aspects of the entertainment industry. The topics can range from light and fluffy to sober and serious. Our focus is on music artists, but we also feature producers, authors, directors, and even promoters. The Douglas Coleman Show. Sometimes chat, sometimes music, always entertaining. Again, it's available today at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS. You can also connect with them on Facebook at Douglas Coleman Show 1, follow on Twitter at Douglas Coleman 3, and you can even find them on TuneIn Radio. Again, that's the Douglas Coleman Show at the website douglascolemanmusic.com/DCS, iTunes, Spreaker, YouTube, and more. Go listen, download, subscribe, and share with your social networks today.
And now...
Hey, Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. See? Nothing up my sleeve. Presto! Wrong hat.
Now here's something we hope you'll really like.
Okay, please welcome my guest, Jennifer McGill. How are you, Jennifer?
I'm great, Douglas. How are you?
Doing well.
Awesome.
Your bio was really interesting. When Brian sent it to me, I immediately wanted to have you on the show and hear about your story, because I wouldn't say it's a typical story at all, but in the entertainment business, there's so much craziness and highs and lows with people. One minute they're on top of the world, and the next minute they're not. And yours seems like that you went through the whole spectrum, from being on a hit show to not being in the entertainment business at all, right?
Right. I mean, the world definitely is a roller coaster. There's no escaping the highs and lows that are around. And yes, I did step out of the entertainment industry. As far as, on a global scale, I really hid in my work, and I performed more minutely, if you will. I had really awesome jobs like at Disney World, and I was a vocal coach, and I helped develop other artists, but I just really hid behind the scenes for the most part. And it was kind of a nice little vacation from the magnifying glass of the world, because this was before social media, when I really was at my lowest point and really trying to find myself. I did everything backwards. I knew who I was as a professional, but I didn't know who I was as a human being for much longer.
Well, let's just start at the beginning, because I think your story is really interesting, and I think people are going to kind of want to know the whole thing, if we can do it in the time frame. Plus, we've got some music to play. Again, Brian was nice enough to send the whole album. I don't think we'll get the whole album, but we'll get a couple of songs out of it anyways. So what I'd like to do is just kind of, if you can take us through your life, and then we'll break in spots and stick a song in. How's that sound?
Absolutely. Yeah, okay. No problem.
All right. So how did you get into the entertainment industry to begin with? Because you started
my mother
really
and
young,
I.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I was a little girl from a small town in Texas. And my mother and I were very close, and we loved music. And, we did everything on a small scale, but genuinely. And so she was my first vocal coach, and she saw that I loved to sing and that I could sing well for a little girl. And she wanted to support whatever I was in love with doing. And I saw a Miss Texas pageant, and I loved the idea of you get to sing really big and then you get a crown. So I asked my mother, how can I do that? And we found a little pageant to start, and I won the singing competition. I won the talent competition, and I was just hooked. I had the tiniest crown. It might have had maybe 10 rhinestones in it. And I was just hooked on this stage thing, this attention thing, and we were very, very humble in, usually you hear pageants as being this really big infectious thing. And really I wanted it for all the right reasons. It was like my sport, and mother made most of my dresses, and I just pretty much won every talent competition I was in for the next 3 years, until a judge, who was also an agent, discovered me and on a handshake with my mother submitted me for my first audition at 10 years old, which was the Mickey Mouse Club. And that was the gig I got.
Wow.
So it was really a Cinderella story where I was a raw talent who did not know anything about show business past being the best you can be on a live stage in front of a live audience. And I was put into a world that I really was in love with. I loved the variety show that was the new Mickey Mouse Club. We started taping when I was 11, and I was around kids who did the same type of stuff I did. Really for the first time, as far as the concentration of how many of us there were in a small place. And it was the first time I'd ever gone to Disney World, really pretty much every kind of first, except opening my mouth and singing and getting attention. And I did that for almost 7 years. I was there from the pilot all the way through the 7th season of the new Mickey Mouse Club. And I saw many amazing kids come and go, including Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Ryan Gosling, Keri, just to name a few, all unique and talented. That was the best part of show business, was just the amazing people I worked with and loving my job. But really the dark side, the seeds of that roller coaster world of showbiz were planted within me at a very young age. I was told by one of the producers to not necessarily lose weight, but don't gain any more. And I was 12. So very young was when I started wrestling with the magnifying glass of the world's attention and the camera, and it really did sour a lot of the joy I had in my job. And, that only grew as, even though I flourished in loving what I did, I went to college. I decided, not to go pursue this thing called fame. I wanted to learn more about who I was and who I was as an artist. So I went to NYU. I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater, and I really felt ready to step out again into the world of showbiz. And pretty quickly, I got a record deal with Capitol Records that actually turned out to not be sealed because, I in the middle of negotiations, they lost interest in me. And the issue with them, as well as any other record label I encountered, was I was a little too old for what was happening in the pop industry at that moment. And what was happening was Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, there were these younger kids who looked different than I did and sounded different. And that was just the bubblegum pop movement that I didn't really fit into, according to the labels. And it was hard to wrestle with that, being 21 and really for the first time not knowing my purpose, not knowing my identity, and feeling like the gates were fully closed to me because of what I looked like. So that's chapter 1.
Okay, that's chapter 1. I want to go back. You mentioned a whole bunch of very familiar names. Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears. They were kids, but I mean, were they all there at the same time, or when you were there, or did they kind of come through at different times?
I was one of only 3 kids who saw everybody through the pilot through season 7. So everybody that I just mentioned arrived after I did. Keri Russell and Chasez arrived when I was about 14. And I met Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera when I was 16. They were in season 6 and 7. And at that point, the kids who had come into the Mickey Mouse Club that last few seasons, they were all fans of the show to some degree. They looked up to us, not only because they were so much shorter than we were, but they were younger, And I actually did have a great relationship with Justin Timberlake. He was about 13. And I was about 16. And so, from 14 to 17 as well, we had a good friendship. And, they were real kids. They were honestly more talented than what I was when I was their age. I mean, Britney came to us when she was, I think, 12, and that's 1 year older than I was when I showed up at the pilot, and just so polished, so good at what she did. I learned how to be a Mouseketeer and how to polish my talent through the years. And it made these newest kids coming in to season 6 and 7 step up the game. because we had gotten better with age. And so they had to come in even younger and be just as good. And they did not disappoint. They were amazing kids.
So I'm trying to think back. That time frame was right around Justin Bieber starting out, yeah?
Actually, it was before Justin Bieber.
It was before Bieber, okay.
Yep, this was in the 90s. This was about 1997 when Britney Spears came out with Hit Me Baby One More Time.
Oh, okay.
And NSYNC came out around that time too. Since I was friends with three of them, I had gone to high school with Joey Fatone. And Lance and Chris were Mickey Mouse Club fans to an extent. And then, of course, Justin and JC I had worked with. When they were developing their European tour, before America knew who NSYNC was, I would go hang out with them, at the house that they had in Orlando, Florida, where my parents also lived, when I was home from college. And that's how I know it was during my college days that the bubblegum pop movement started, because that's when I saw my old former Mouseketeers start popping up on MTV and in magazines. Hit Me Baby One More Time was being talked about when I was a senior in college. So that was about 1998.
Okay, so you were just a little bit too old for that.
Just a little bit too old.
Yeah.
I was cute and talented in my own way, but I had grown into a tall, strong, big singer. And the bubblegum pop movement had enough of that, and they just were looking for something different than me. It's one of those mysteries that it's not like there was some formula I couldn't fulfill, but it just wasn't God's timing for me. And you can't convince someone at 21 that, this denial in their life, being denied this passage, is good for them. But I believe that I was saved from a lot of dysfunction in a world of showbiz that I really wasn't equipped to handle.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I know from people I've interviewed and from people I've seen that there is a big issue with child actors where they grow out of their job, essentially. And do you know who Paul Peterson is?
I don't.
He runs
not by name,
an organization called A Minor Consideration, which is trying to help a lot of child actors who, were big stars when they were little kids, and then as soon as they grew up, they had no work. And he was a child actor way back in the late 50s, early 60s on a show called The Donna Reed Show.
Awesome.
And he went through the same issues with, once he grew out of that role, he did things like driving a taxi and working as a waiter. And and a lot of his peers, several of them committed suicide. It was a whole big thing. So he started this organization. But the point being is that it is difficult for a lot of kids once, they've achieved this level of stardom and they get everything they want and they're making a lot of money, and all of a sudden they grow up and nobody wants them anymore. And sometimes,
absolutely.
Yeah. And sometimes it's too much, because the strain is like, it's just too much for the kids. Their emotional maturity isn't there yet. All right, let's get back to you. So after Mickey Mouse Club, then how old were you when that finished?
The Mickey Mouse Club wrapped when I was a senior in high school, so I was 17.
Okay, and you went right on to college from there? Or did you try to pursue anything?
I did.
else?
I went right on. My junior year in high school, I knew that I was going to NYU. I had gotten on the ball with that, and I knew that was the best next step for me. So, yes, right after my senior year in high school, I had the summer to collect myself, and I went off to New York City for the next 4 to 5 years.
Did people recognize you when you went to college?
They did. The Mickey Mouse Club was still running, at least through my freshman year. And I did have kids in the hallway recognize me and kind of geek out about it. And it was weird for me because I just thought, okay, well, I've moved on, so why would anyone know who I was? And it was before social media like Facebook or anything. So there was no YouTube,
Right.
You had to watch the show.
Yeah.
the cable channel to see me. And it was weird for me. I was used to being recognized in the Disney parks and even around Orlando, but yes, all the way in New York. The funniest story I have about that was when Backstreet Boys were doing a signing at the big Virgin Megastore in Times Square. I had a friend ask me to go wait in line to get their signature. For whatever reason. I mean, she wasn't in New York, and I guess it was few and far between that people could get to them. So I remember rounding the corner and getting to Virgin Megastore, and I saw this long line of excited young girls. And immediately I thought, oh no, this looks exactly like the lines that used to wait for our Mickey Mouse Club concerts and tapings. And I thought, what have I done? I'm in a sea of fans who probably know who I am. And people started turning around and recognizing me. And I was a little panicky. And I did actually find some safety and, got through the line and got this autograph from these kids that I didn't really know, the Backstreet Boys at the time. But it's just odd. Like, I just didn't think about myself as a celebrity, as someone who you would know on the street as a face.
Well, I hope they let you cut to the front of the line.
They didn't. I don't even yeah. I mean, I what happened was these fans had special wristbands and they were with their dad, and I got one too. So it was a safe group of people, and we're actually all friends to this day. It was really fun. But yeah, I did have to get used to kind of re-entering a normal type of life as a college student, only going to school for the first time since I was 11 years old, because previously I had a full-time job and gone to school full-time as well. But re-entering kind of this normal life of just, getting myself educated again, but also understanding that other people didn't see me that way, that they still saw me as the Mouseketeer. So
while you were taping the Mickey Mouse Club, did you have like on-set tutors, or did you actually go to school?
For me, because my family moved us to Orlando very soon after the pilot was finished, in basically 1990, I was enrolled in the school that also handled our on-location education, our tutoring company. So what would happen for me is while we were clocking in each day, we were required to have 3 hours of on-location tutoring with our company, no matter where we lived in the United States or Canada. We were tutored on set. But once the show wrapped for that season and we were sent back to our homes in America or Canada, I still attended the same school, physically showed up every day to the middle school or high school that we had been working from. So I kind of went to school all year round for about 7 years.
Oh, so you went in the summer as well, yeah?
Well, usually we would tape during the summer times. That's when,
okay.
Right, we would draw a really healthy audience of tourists coming through the parks at Disney during the summer times. And so it was very easy for us to get a great live audience to come in and watch our tapings. So it wasn't just summer. Every season was a little different, but most of the time we did tape in the summertime.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about your mom, and then we'll get to your album. Now, you said that your mom was very supportive of you from basically the get-go, yeah?
Yes. My mother and I... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, was she a classic stage mom, or was this just... Or did she support you because you wanted to do it?
My mother had a minor in music, but she was more of a classically trained woman, and she found that I had this different voice at a very young age. And so I think that she was excited that I loved what she loved, but I took it to a different place than where she could personally take it. So I believe that she just wanted me to succeed and to love what I was doing. I remember being startled by the behavior of certain pageant moms or stage moms along the way. So I think that even from my biased perspective, she wasn't the cutthroat stage mom that I think the cliche is built from. We were giddy and in a way innocent and ignorant of how the showbiz world works. Very, very few and far between did I have store-bought dresses when I started out on the stage singing as a little girl. And my paycheck for the new Mickey Mouse Club was more than what both of my parents combined made in a year. So it was just a big shift that I could go shopping at the mall and that I could really have whatever I needed and wanted. But I never felt like a brat, like a stage brat, because my mother and father, we grew up in church, and we were reminded that, so-and-so has a great voice because she practices, and so-and-so looks a certain way because they put work into it. And you can put work into anything and excel. She was a teacher. And so she trained us, both my brother and I, to be patient and humble and to work for what we want. We all believed in that. So, she was not a stage mom like most people would kind of envision the cliche stage mom.
Now, some of the stage moms that I've seen and heard about are pretty bad, and the kids suffer for that.
I was around a lot of that pressure that parents can put onto their working kids. And, I think the most pressure that was ever put on me was from myself, because I had a production company wanting to mold me into a certain thing. And then I had my mother just loving on me and completely reinforcing how beautiful and talented and valuable I was, even in the privacy of our own home, doing whatever she could. And I think that, her biggest, not even her biggest offense, but what really did, I think in her social life, both in our small town of Texas, but also among kind of a hen house of show moms, the only way that she alienated herself was because she was just so proud and giddy of her daughter. She was probably very gushy. I did see that. But it all came from a very innocent place. And I think that's what set her apart. And also, even from my perspective, like even how I behaved, being giddy and excited and totally geeking out about everything I was doing, I think we were just both nerds in this world of, polished showbiz people. And, we were sometimes a little ostracized for it, but I think we stuck together, as a family because, we liked being a family. We liked our home life, and that's what we stood on, our faith and our family when things got weird.
Okay, I want to get to one of your songs. The album is called Unbreakable. I think we'll play the title track now. Can you tell us just briefly about it? And then we'll run it and we'll go back to talking.
When I first started writing Unbreakable, I had this vision of coming to on the battlefield. And, the dust is settling, the smoke is clearing, and you're brushing yourself off from whatever ordeal you just went through. And you're looking around to see who's still with you, who's still here with you fighting the good fight. And for me, that's God. But it's also your family, your closest friends, the people who will stand with you when things aren't perfect in life, doing battle together spiritually. And so, I learned that when God is at the center of anything that I'm battling spiritually in this world, I'm unbreakable. Because before I made him the center of my life, I would fall apart all over the place because the world isn't going to change. It's going to hit you with stuff. But it's how you react to that. So I am now unbreakable because my faith is the center of any spiritual warfare I encounter in this world.
Okay. Well, this is Unbreakable by Jennifer McGill.
Nothing can separate us. Nothing can come between us now. Nothing can take away, break away the power of love. Unbreakable, unbreakable. I see you. The dust settles on the ground. I hear you. The walls are falling down. We're still standing, arm in arm and heaven bound. Unbreakable, unbreakable. I'm with you through the battle and the blood. You're with me through the fire and the flood. We're still standing, eye to eye, so new. Unbreakable, unbreakable. Nothing can separate us. Nothing
is nice. I like that.
Thank you.
Are you signed to a label at this point?
I'm signed to an independent label. It's called Lifetime Impact Music.
Okay. They have their own studio because the production's real good.
Thank you. Yeah. It's actually a smorgasbord of places and locations. Half of that album was produced in my second bedroom by my husband. And we used a few different studios. We recorded in Orlando, in Nashville. One of our producers lives in Orlando. Of course, my husband and I live here. And another producer, yes, down the road from me has a full home studio. So, we really did run the gamut. But we have talented people. So that kind of matters more.
Take us back to a day in the life of the Mickey Mouse Club. I'm just kind of curious, and I think people would be interested. Just give us like the one day when you went to work. What exactly happened?
One of my favorite days, as far as the structure that did change from season to season, is that we clocked in at about 9:30. And for most of the years, I had to get driven in because I was not old enough to drive. And you show up to school. So you sit there for the 3 hours and you work with maybe 2 to 5 classmates, depending on what grade you were in. And every subject had its own teacher, or maybe one teacher provided biology to one kid and then, advanced mathematics somewhere else, just depending on their knowledge. But, you only had to work on your own stuff. And there was only a total of like maybe 13 kids in school with you. You had your own cubby hole. And you had a very safe space to really learn however you needed to. So for those of us kids who liked school, it was extremely beneficial. And so you focus on that, which has nothing to do with showbiz. And then you go to lunch. And so lunch was always catered. And you would mix with the crew and the staff. And usually we'd eat in our dressing rooms, or if, you have your itinerary for the day, maybe you're going to go to an acting class after, maybe you're going to run through lines. Maybe you have hair and makeup and wardrobe fittings, or maybe you're going to do the filming of a commercial. You never knew what was going to happen until you show up, you read your itinerary, and then you're ready, whenever you get that itinerary the week before or, the beginning of the week. So I always looked forward to the afternoons because there was comedy skits, there was dance rehearsals. You would go record some of your vocals in their high-tech production studio. Everything was right there. At MGM Studios, and we had our own dressing rooms. I mean, you really did have a lot of cool private space. But I just loved being around all of these coaches and producers and choreographers and wardrobe ladies and makeup people, and just creating with everybody. So the interesting thing is we did work really hard. I mean, I did love all the variety of the show, but you did work really hard. After you did your 9 to 6:30 day, you go home and you memorize scripts, you memorize songs, you work on dance routines. I probably did a workout video, to try to stay in shape, all through my teen years. And, so really it was more than an 8-hour day for me, for any of us. Very often we would get pulled out of the normal day of school and then, singing, acting, dancing, when there was a music video to shoot. And so some kids on certain weeks didn't have as much singing, acting, dancing to do. So they may stay in school all day, banking hours for the day that we all get pulled out to do a big group video out in a field somewhere, and we don't have time for school. And then, of course, it all boils down to those taping days when we'd load in the audience. And so after school, after lunch, you get your hair, makeup, wardrobe, everything's laid out for you. You go sit in the chairs and they do you up. And then you go do a song, you go do a skit. There were no cue cards. So everything we did was memorized. It was already prepared. And you go in front of a live studio audience and you just make it happen. And sometimes we repeated songs, lip syncing to our own recordings, 5 times. And you have up to 5 different cameras that you have to know when to look at them, at the certain dance move, at the certain blocking that we've already worked on for skits. So it was extremely multi-layered what these kids did with no cue cards, with raw talent, no auto-tune. And you really were responsible for everything you were taught. Because when you were out there in front of the camera, it's just you doing your thing out there, you know. Very exciting for me. I loved it.
I'm happy to hear there was no auto-tune.
There wasn't. It didn't exist.
Great.
There was no digital. Nothing was digital. You know, there was no social media. There was no YouTube. Everything we did just went straight to the Disney Channel, and everything we recorded had to be really from us, because there was no adjusting a flat note. If you sang something flat in the studio, you had to re-sing it until you got it right.
So they would retake, yeah.
Yes. Yes. In the studio, we would have tracks produced elsewhere. And when it was ready for us to sing to it, they'd bring the kids in, you know, one by one, and we would do our solo part. We would do our harmonies, and you got as many takes as you needed, but it had to come from our bodies. There were no digital adjustments that they could make. They could put a lot of reverb on it, but that was it. And so we were responsible for our voices and our words and knowing what was going on and really taking direction from the production. You know, it did have to come from us.
Did you have a lot of rehearsal? Or was it pretty much just, okay, go?
It was somewhere in between. Okay. Because all of the kids were naturally good at what we were hired to do. There was probably always one facet of our job that each of us had to work harder at. For me, it was the dancing. We would have at least 3 dance rehearsals before we had to get up and do something. But I know maybe in a regular type of dance environment, you had maybe months to prepare a dance for a recital. And that was absolutely not the case for us. We had a week to 2 weeks to prepare a dance and then go up and do it. I remember I traveled for a Mouse in the House episode where I got to meet a fan and sort of walk in her shoes for a day. And she brought me into her dance class, and they were working on this routine. They had almost finished it. And I learned it in that whole 1 to 2 hour class. I learned the whole routine that they'd been working on for months. And that was really the first time that I understood at about 13 years old that I was really doing everything quickly in the job of the new Mickey Mouse Club. So 1 to 2 weeks, you learn everything, and it's up on its feet. And that was with everybody tweaking it. You know, you had someone making up the dances and teaching them to us. You had someone giving us cassette tapes to learn our parts for songs. We had written down lyrics. Then you had to memorize everything. You know, get up. Oh, that was my dog. Sorry about that.
No problem.
But you had to get up and memorize everything, you know. So we were on an advanced track to that. We did not have all the time in the world to get everything right.
Okay, let's fast forward a little bit. So Mickey Mouse Club ends, you go right to college. You said you majored in drama?
Yes, technically undergraduate drama, but I was in the one and only musical theater studio there.
Musical theater, okay.
Uh-huh.
And then after college, what did you do? Where did you go with your life?
I chose New York University because I really wanted to know the most about the world of Broadway and musical theater, so that I could really make a decision of what my next chapter of my career would be. I fell in love with live theater, and I would have gone in that direction, but Capitol Records discovered me right before I graduated college. And so I had a choice to make. Was I going to pursue becoming a recording artist, which really was my first dream? Ever since I can remember, that's what I wanted to be. Or was I going to attend this showcase where the Broadway world could be introduced to me? And I chose the record deal. And so I spent the last weeks of my college career working towards becoming a recording artist. And it didn't work out. It did not happen. And so I really did feel sort of like in between two worlds. And when I decided that I was going to leave New York City and go back to Orlando, Florida, and rebuild my career as a 22-year-old, college graduate, educated performer, seasoned in many different aspects of performing, I walked into dinner theater. That was my first next big thing. And I will say that I am a true believer that it is not about how famous the job is. It's about if you love it and if you do it well and if you are learning something new. And every job that I took, from the New Mickey Mouse Club to rebuilding my career as a live performer after college, I learned something new. And so dinner theater was a level of interacting and improv with the live audience that I've never experienced before. And I loved it. And then Disney World hired me, back as an adult for an equity job where I studied under Deke Sharon, who is the a cappella arranger of all of the Pitch Perfect movies. And at that point at Epcot Center, he was my musical director and the arranger of songs, and I learned how to sing a cappella live, again, with no auto tune, with a live group of people and just thinking on my feet musically. I loved it. I became a clinician where I taught choral groups who came through Disney's Magic Music Days. I also started touring the world in cover bands, doing everything from Michael Jackson tribute shows to, just top 40s hits, all over the world. I was back into traveling. I loved what I did, but nobody knew what I was doing. The world didn't know where I was, but I loved my jobs. So I stayed in the entertainment world the whole time. And after a long time of trying to search for what my purpose was in that world, I landed into dramatic and musical ministry. When I was 30, it was really the next building of my career, because I put my faith in the center of all the talent that God gave me and all of the polishing that I had done, all of the years that I'd been in this industry. I finally had a new revived purpose for why I do what I do. And so I started using my talents for faith-based projects.
I want to back up to something you said. You said that Capitol Records discovered you. That sounds almost like something that doesn't happen anymore. How did they discover you? Was it from Mickey Mouse that they knew who you were?
No, it was like another Cinderella story in the making. I was on the very end of a cassette tape that a friend had sent in as a demo of their songs. I had sung a demo for a song I contributed to, and Capitol did not choose any of the songs, but they were curious about the voice on the last song of this cassette tape, as well as a manager who was based out of LA. So they all knew each other and just sort of had that idea of, let's figure out who this girl is. And, the showbiz loves to discover somebody. And so that was really the beginning. It was the voice on a cassette tape that they gravitated towards, which is ironic because I believe what ultimately made everything fall apart was my age and my looks versus what I sounded like. Yeah. And there was nothing wrong with my looks. Like, I'm not trying to down myself. I looked like a perfectly normal teenager, even though I was 21. I've always looked younger than my age. And, there was just something that held the labels back, whether it was, some of the excuses were I sounded too old. I was too tall. Maybe I didn't have the right look or the right skin color. Could you lose a size? There was just all of these things that really were out of my control because I was being compared to girls who were not me. It was just apples to oranges. I was a unique artist and it just wasn't my time.
I grew up back in the 70s. I'm probably a bit older than you. And back then, nobody cared what you looked like. It was all about the music. In fact, I go as so far as to say that many of the greatest artists from the 70s were pretty ugly, and they didn't really care what they looked like because this was before MTV. MTV kind of changed all that. Then it became more important what you looked like and what kind of look you had. It all started to change in the 80s. So what I find interesting is when record labels say things like that, like you don't have the right look. It seems ridiculous because what are they trying to sell? The music or, the CD cover?
Right. And that is what began to happen for sure.
It's just, that's
the whole
crazy.
Video killed the radio star. I mean, it's true. It became a broader package. The image mattered. The image mattered. The image mattered. It wasn't about capturing an image of a talent. It was about selling the image and creating the talent to back it up. It was just a reversal of marketing. And, the labels have every right to do whatever they want to do to make their money and make their product. And every artist that I have met who has gone on to be famous, I find them all extremely talented and great people. And so for me, the adjustment I had to make was, okay, well, maybe this isn't my path. But I was stalling for so many years in this kind of shame spiral of I'm not good enough, or I'm too much, I'm less than. It was just this trap of comparison instead of just finding how I can celebrate me. What is there in this life for all this talent and all this experience that I have? That was the question I wasn't asking myself for a long time as an artist.
So you were just saying to yourself, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, rather than saying, but I could do this or I could do that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I was in someone else's cage.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get into that trap too. And I think especially in the entertainment business, because you're always compared. You're always compared to somebody else. There's not too many people that come along that are just so unique that they're not compared to anyone. There's always a starting point for everybody. It seems. Well,
like. and then even if you are like the number one most unique person in the business, there's still this issue of reinventing yourself time and time again if you're in a popular part of that industry.
Right.
There's always this pressure of, okay, well, I've had this many number ones. Am I going to get another one? Is this song going to, break the record again? I mean, you can find an endless supply of pressure, even if you're comparing yourself to yourself. And it's either a cage or it's, spurring you on to be better than before and more excellent and just do the best you can. It's either a positive or a negative. And I was just stuck in the negative for a long, long time, on my level of accomplishment.
Yeah, you got to constantly re-up yourself. The next album you put out, you're going to think, oh, it's got to be better than that one, or I got to change this, or, it's a constant challenge with people. Let's make it a little bit better on this next one. Let's do this. Let's do that. I did want to ask you about songwriting. Now, when did you start doing that?
Back when I was in negotiations with Capitol Records, I was connected with some amazing songwriters, and we were focusing on, of course, the bubblegum pop movement. I was writing upbeat songs, which was a complete change in direction from my little poems and my little a cappella slow songs that I started writing maybe at the end of high school and into college, just on my own, because I don't play an instrument and I actually prefer writing with other people. But I just would hear things in my head, hear melodies, and just write my own little things. But with that era of these very accomplished songwriters, like Jimmy Harry was one of my favorite ones. We just would write these upbeat pop songs, and it was really fun to collaborate. And as far as I know, none of those songs ever went anywhere because, the deal didn't happen, and, you lose numbers. And I mean, I remember I had this amazing conversation with David Frank, who wrote Don't Disturb This Groove. He also wrote Christina Aguilera's Genie in a Bottle, if I'm not mistaken. Like, that was the comparison that was the parallel we were making, because they almost have the same kind of beat, and we just had a great dinner together, with some of the company, and we talked about songwriting, and that, it is just, who and who you collaborate with. And there isn't just one way to get X, Y, and Z accomplished, and I really enjoyed that mentoring that he did in that one moment. And that's one of the regrets I have, that, I lost his number or whatever, but it's people like that I was able to, start my kind of songwriting phase with. And, I then kind of dropped all of that for many years because it didn't work out with creating original music and being a part of a label. And so I circled back into covering other people's music, like I had done on the new Mickey Mouse Club. And before that, with talent competitions, you sing other people's songs at the time. That's what you did. And so then I started singing other people's songs again, and being a park and barker where you just, you don't say anything. You just show up in a pretty dress and you sing stuff and people applaud and then you get paid and you go home. That was my role for a long time, because there was, immediate gratification in the attention and the paycheck, and then you go home, and that satisfied me on the surface for many, many years. But underneath, I felt really expendable. I didn't really feel like I was reaching my potential, that I was just sort of artistically treading water. I just didn't know how to break out of it, for a long time.
So this album, it's got 16 tracks on it. Did you write these, or do you write some of them, or it doesn't tell me exactly?
Right. On the CD, our actual CD package, we made sure that all the credits are on there, who wrote and produced and arranged, all sorts of good stuff. And I co-wrote the 10 original songs, which are basically they are the first 9 and then number 11. Hanging On for Dear Life is number 10, and that is a cover of a song that I made popular in my New Mickey Mouse Club days on our original album called MMC. That was a fan favorite. It made it into the soundtrack, the theme song of a dark comedy 90s movie called My Boyfriend's Back. And so it circulated enough that it became my signature song that fans remember me for. So my husband and I co-produced it and rearranged it for this album. And then there are 5 worship songs. They're all covers. I've had the pleasure of speaking to some of the writers of the songs. And it's an honor to cover these songs. They are my favorites from when I worship on the platform in churches.
Oh, these you sing in church, actually?
The 5 worship songs, for sure. I have sung all of those in church.
Oh, okay.
Hanging On for Dear Life, I used to tour with in my Mickey Mouse Club days. When we toured, we did USO tours, like Scotland, Iceland, Germany type of places, as well as some American tours. So Hanging On for Dear Life was my solo. And then the 9, or I guess the 10 original songs that no one's ever heard before on the album, they are co-written by me. They're all autobiographical about my life.
Great. Well, we have time for one more song. I thought we were going to get to do more, but we've had our conversation going and the time just flew right by. And I'm getting...
that happens, right?
Yeah. And we're getting down to the wire on the count. So which one do you want to do? We'll play one more.
Well, I've done a video for song number 2, and it's one of the most special songs that I wrote with Jen Bostic. It's called What I Know Now, and it's produced by my husband, Jeff Bohannon. It's kind of a love letter to my little girl self. It's also something God would tell me. It's something that my mother would tell me. But if I could reach out in time and speak to the 11-year-old me when I first got verbally bullied, when I first started feeling really different and that my uniqueness was not celebrated, these are the words I would tell her. And so it's all about what I know now as a strong woman of faith, trying to support this little girl who just doesn't understand her worth yet.
Okay, Jennifer, we are out of time, and I want to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your very interesting life story with us and with my listeners. We're going to go out on your song, What I Know Now. Again, thank you so much for coming on. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure as well, Douglas. Thank you.
More than a shooting star, you're so much stronger than you think you are. More than a flash in the pan, you can do more than you think you can. I know it feels like the end right now, but hold on to my words somehow. No matter what they say, you're braver than you know. These giants that you raise are most. You feel the weight of the world right now. But hold on to my words.